Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now just the other day I was messing around with a gaming laptop that has a broken screen, trying to turn it into a bodged custom desktop that I could plug into a monitor. I've always thought it would be cool to own some sort of laptop desktop hybrid, even if ripping the display off an old Alienware and hiding the remaining wires represents the upper limits of my technological abilities. Thankfully, Minisforum have taken this idea and made it a lot nicer to look at than it ever did in my head. This is the NUCXI7, and for the past couple of days I've been using this thing to play games, edit videos and do other general computer related things. This one is configured with an 8-core i7-11800H, 16 gigs of dual channel 3200MHz DDR4, a 512 gig SSD and an RTX 3070 laptop GPU, though this can be altered, and you can even order a bare bones version if you want to add your own memory, storage and operating system yourself. Admittedly, this is a little more costly than the stuff we'd usually look at on the channel, but I always find myself drawn in by the design of these Minisforum systems, and I'm sure there is certainly a market for something like this. It's fairly light, very slim, and takes up very little room on a desk. It's also very quiet in operation, even when we hit the high performance mode button, which increases the fan speeds and, quote, toggles between high performance and self-balancing performance states. You might be wondering how effective this little button is, and honestly, it's noticeably so. Here, for example, in Mafia Definitive Edition, standing on this busy street corner gets us around 105 FPS on average with the highest settings, which is great. That said, toggling the high performance mode means that while the fans do get a little bit noisier, performance shoots up to around 115 FPS, and although the fans are more audible, as I said, there's still not a lot of noise coming from this thing. That and heat were my two main concerns. Before we talk a little more about that, as well as additional performance metrics, let's look a little bit more at what you get and at the design of the NUCXI7. In the box, there's a power cable, power brick, HDMI cable, manual, which includes disassembly instructions by the way, a stand for the system itself, and a couple of screws to hold the stand in place. I totally forgot about these, and I should probably screw them in, although the system is very steady and the weight of the stand makes it very sturdy as well. Around the outside of the PC we have plenty of heat dissipation vents, including loads of holes on one side. Port-wise we have USB 3.2, an SD card reader, headphone jack, Thunderbolt 4, HDMI 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and the power connector of course. Inside we can see the heat dissipation and cooling system, including the dual fans. We can also get a good look at the included hardware here. Adding more RAM or storage, perhaps both, is very easy to do, and the unit can be disassembled by removing just 3 screws. Now then, we must talk about performance. As far as pure processing power goes, I have no complaints. 8 cores and 16 threads with a turbo frequency of 4.6 GHz, excellent. Video editing is a breeze. Temperature wise, under load it's not uncommon to see between 70 and 80 degrees Celsius, which sounds high, but for a laptop CPU that's sitting inside this thin enclosure, it's perfectly fine, and to be honest, better than I thought. This is with the high performance button toggled as well. Similar temps can be seen from the GPU, which is a 3070 laptop graphics card. According to GPU-Z, this is the lower clocked version with an on-paper boost clock of 1290 MHz, but I found that it goes way higher than that and consumes more power. This is a good thing, as not all laptop 3070s are the same. Mafia Definitive Edition is our first benchmark. I started fresh with this machine, so after setting up the included Windows 11 Pro Pro OS, which comes with the system if you opt for storage, I installed a few of my current favourite games to test here, and with my concerns about overheating out of the way, I could actually enjoy myself. Mafia 2020 is an excellent remake, and here with the highest settings with motion blur and depth of field disabled purely on the basis that I don't like either of them, the game ran with over 100 FPS. I was going to stick with 1080p throughout, but this thing is capable of more after all, so I just decided to use what I thought was best for each scenario. In Cyberpunk 2077, either 1080p high or 1440p medium is a good choice. 1080p high meant an 84 FPS average. Remember, compared to desktop counterparts, laptop GPUs aren't as powerful, especially when there are different variants in terms of speed and power. I think this is a pretty good result though. Even the laptop 3070 is still good for 1440p, and switching to 2560 by 1440 using the medium in-game preset will also mean at least 60 frames per second, in what is possibly the most demanding game we tested today. Though it is between this and Spider-Man Remastered, which we'll move on to now. Here I went with 1440p and chose the high preset. I also enabled ray tracing but set ambient occlusion to off. 1440p and 1080p didn't perform too differently, so I thought I may as well opt for the higher res. As for why this is, well, I'm not entirely sure, but this is a very CPU intensive game from what I've found, so it could be the limiting factor at both resolutions. Regardless, the performance is still pretty good, and you could always lower the settings or enable one of the scaling options, such as FSR or DLSS. Native 1440p will still give us a plus 60 FPS experience though. Elden Ring at 1440p with 60 frames per second was easily achievable with the high preset. I did turn grass quality down to medium, and although this was probably unnecessary, it is one of the more demanding options from the menu, so bear that in mind if your hardware is struggling. Not too much to be concerned about here though, there will be the occasional drop. In Fortnite, I usually advise going with the low settings to try and get as many frames as possible. I usually combine this with the epic view distance option. Here I chose high at 1440p once again because I wanted to see if this machine could handle it, and despite a couple of little dips here and there at the start of my game, performance was absolutely fine, with a 95 FPS average and relatively acceptable 1 and 0.1% lows. I'm really liking this thing so far. I like the appeal of it. I think you could put it under a TV unit or beside a TV and it really wouldn't look out of place at all. Not to mention with Steam games you could use big picture mode, so you could treat it like a console in a way and connect a controller to it if you want to play from your sofa. For our final game today we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. As you might imagine, this had no problem running at 1440p with the Ultra Graphics preset, though post-processing was on low. No real reason, it just defaulted to this, so I left it as it was, and even in busier city areas we got over 120 FPS. Not bad. I like the Minisforum NUCXI7. If you want a powerful PC with almost the same portability as a laptop yet something that is quieter than a lot on offer, then this could be for you, especially if you're the type of person to always hook your laptop up to an external monitor anyway. Now, just like with all mini PCs, there is a specific target audience. I mean, there must be, otherwise Minisforum wouldn't keep making them, right? Those with limited desk space or people with a more casual approach to PC gaming, those who aren't keen on building something themselves, could find a machine like this to be ideal. I think the low noise levels and respectable thermals also add some positive points to this thing's stat sheet, as does lower power consumption. This machine won't be for everyone, that's a given, but I do find it absolutely fascinating. As always though, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. I'll leave a link to the product page where you can take a look at this thing and configure it to your liking. If you configure it with the i5 processor, it'll be the NUCXi7, that'll be the model name. I really like this thing. I think it's fascinating to me, and I know we say it a lot as, you know, YouTubers, I hate that word, but we say it a lot, oh, I'm going to start using this thing on a daily basis, this is my new PC, but with this thing I can really see myself using it every day. I've already installed DaVinci Resolve, Photoshop and all of my go-to apps, so there we go. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.